Okay, so we've all heard about heaven, right? Like, be a good person, go to heaven, spend forever in paradise. But
Right.
what if that's like just one part of a much bigger picture?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today is this idea of a two-part afterlife. So heaven's still there.
Right.
It's still amazing, but it might actually just be like a transition
Okay.
to something even bigger and better.
Like a layover.
Yeah, like a layover, a celestial
I
layover.
like it. Sign me up for the first class lounge.
Exactly.
So this is interesting. Where are we even starting with all this? What sources do we have?
Okay, so we're going to start with something that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. It's a near-death experience.
Okay.
A first-hand account of someone who says they got a glimpse of this, like, in-between heaven.
A sneak peek.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're going to dive into some biblical texts and, like, theological analyses
Right.
that
Yeah.
back up this whole two-part afterlife idea.
Okay, so this near-death experience, let's start there, because that sounds wild.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Lay it on me.
So we have Dean Braxton, and his whole thing is, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
The video is called Man Dies, Talks to Jesus, and Describes What Heaven Looks Like. Shocking testimony. NDE.
Hmm.
And it's,
Catch a title.
yeah, right, and it really is shocking. So Braxton, he's undergoing this medical procedure, and he actually dies.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I don't mean like he almost died. He was
Oh.
clinically dead.
Wow, okay.
No heartbeat, nothing.
So he wasn't just near those pearly gates, he was like knocking on them.
Exactly.
So then what?
So he says he leaves his body and goes on this crazy fast journey to this, like, just beautiful and welcoming version of heaven.
Okay.
Talks about how peaceful it was, how everyone belonged.
It's like the ideal version of home.
Right. And get this, he even encounters Jesus
Wow.
and says he was just overcome with this feeling of just pure love.
That's intense. But you said two-part afterlife, so there's got to be more to this story, right?
Here's where it gets really interesting. So Braxton is literally being told by Jesus, it's not your time, you got to go back. And this happened not just once, but 3 times. 3 separate times he's sent back.
He's like, wait, I just got here.
I know, right? It's like getting a glimpse of this amazing vacation spot, but then you have to get right back on the plane.
Yeah, like, what's the point of even seeing it if you can't even stay?
That's a question that people have been asking for centuries. It
Yeah.
really makes you think. But okay, so Braxton's experience, as crazy as it is just one guy's story.
Right.
What's really interesting is that this whole two-part afterlife thing,
Yeah.
there's actually some surprising support for it in, theological texts.
Okay, so we're moving from like a personal story
Right.
to like actual scripture and interpretations.
Exactly. So basically, the main argument is that heaven,
Uh-huh.
as amazing as it is kind of like a temporary state.
Okay, so like a waiting room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a waiting room for believers, a place of peace and rest after we die,
Okay, got it.
before this ultimate resurrection thing.
Right.
Not the final destination.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. So if heaven's the waiting room, what's the main event?
So picture this. A completely renewed and restored earth.
Whoa.
It's not about us ditching this world. It's about heaven coming down here.
So less escaping to the clouds, more like Earth 2.0?
Exactly. A divine upgrade, if you will.
I like it. But are there actual verses in the Bible that say this is going to happen?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's Matthew 5.5, for example,
Yeah.
right? It says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth."
Okay.
Not inherit heaven, inherit the earth.
Good point.
That's a pretty bold statement, don't you think? It suggests a future where humanity's thriving.
Right here.
Exactly, right
Right.
here on a totally transformed earth.
Wow. Okay. What else is there?
Well, there's John's vision, too.
Okay.
In Revelation 21:1-4, he describes a new heaven and a new earth.
Okay.
And a lot of theologians see this not as like a brand new planet,
Okay.
but as a symbolic way of saying that God's going to live with us on a restored and, perfect creation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's all connected back to that original plan.
All right, remember Genesis 1 and 2, where God wanted humanity to be here on earth,
Yeah.
to rule it, but also live in harmony with it. So this whole renewed earth idea,
Mm-hmm.
it could be seen as that plan finally being fulfilled.
A cosmic do-over.
Exactly. And then there's Paul in 1 Corinthians 15:42-44.
Okay.
He's talking about believers coming back to life, and he says we'll have these glorified bodies, not like ghosts or whatever,
Right.
but new bodies that can never die,
Yeah.
made for a physical world.
So we're getting an upgrade. It's amazing how all these pieces fit together.
Right.
But how do we make sense of this with what we've always heard about heaven?
That's where it gets even more interesting. See, many theologians have always thought about it like a timeline,
Like a progression.
Exactly. First, there's the transition. That's the intermediate heaven, that place of peace.
The waiting room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then comes the resurrection, the judgment, and then this incredible new heaven and new earth.
Where we'll have our cool new bodies.
Exactly. We're talking about a whole new existence.
Wow. So the heaven we always hear about might just be one step in a much bigger journey.
That's what it's looking like. And this changes everything. It changes how we see the afterlife and how we live right now.
It's not just about getting to heaven. It's about, like, bringing heaven down here.
Exactly. It makes you think about your purpose in a whole new way.
So it's like we're not just working towards a one-way ticket up to the clouds, but we're actually part of this whole thing, this future where heaven and earth are like one and the same.
You got it. It really makes you rethink everything, your priorities, how you act, all of it.
It's a huge shift. And speaking of priorities,
Yeah.
one of the sources you sent, that article, We Won't Live in Heaven Forever, and That's a Good Thing,
Right.
it really got me thinking about, like, the whole bucket list thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because if this two-part of afterlife is real, it kind of messes with that whole idea, doesn't it?
Totally. That article points out this weird thing we do.
Yeah.
We're all like, gotta do it all now. This is my only chance.
Right, like skydiving, finally learning Italian, that trip to Antarctica.
Exactly. Like we're trying to cram it all in.
It's like we're speedrunning life.
Yeah. But the article says that this mindset can actually distract us from something so much bigger.
What's that?
Advancing God's kingdom right here, right now.
Okay.
Because if we really believe in this future where God's in charge of everything, a totally renewed earth,
Yeah.
then what we do now matters even more,
It's less about escaping from everything and more about bringing, like, the best stuff to Earth.
You got it. Less bucket list, more like a to-do list to make the world better.
Exactly. So what does that even look like? How does believing this change things day to day?
Well, think about how we treat the planet.
Okay.
If we really believe it's going to be renewed, then we've got to take care of it now, right?
Yeah, because it's not just temporary, it's the future.
Exactly. It becomes a spiritual thing, honoring God's creation.
Makes sense. And what about, like, social justice and all that? Does this change how we see that?
Absolutely. If God's kingdom is all about love and justice, then we have to fight for that now. We're part of making that happen.
So we're like heavenly citizens, but down here.
Right. It's about living out those values, love, justice, generosity, all of that.
It's not just for later, it's for now.
Exactly. Remember that verse, Romans 8:19-22? It talks about all of creation waiting for this renewal.
Yeah, it's like the whole world's holding its breath.
Right. And we get to be part of that change.
Wow, that's powerful. This whole deep dive has been a wild ride.
Yeah, it has.
From pearly gates to Earth 2.0 with a little layover in heaven in between.
And a layover with Jesus. Don't forget that part.
Right. But before we go, I've got to ask, any final thoughts? What's one thing that might get people thinking even more about this?
We talked a lot about heaven being outside of time, right? Like our normal time doesn't really work there.
Yeah.
But then that makes you wonder, what does time even mean in heaven? Is it like a line, a circle?
Or something we can't even imagine.
Right. It shows you how limited we are.
It really makes you think.
It does. And it reminds us that there's so much we don't know, so much beyond what we can understand now.
This has definitely left me with more questions than answers.
Me too.
But that's a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. It means we keep searching, keep asking questions.
Exactly. And be open to whatever's out there.
Yeah, because this whole afterlife thing, it's worth thinking about.
For sure. And on that note, that's our deep dive for today.
It's been fun.
Everyone listening, we just scratched the surface here, so check out those sources, keep exploring, and thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
Thanks, everyone.